I often chuckle and think about which quilts of mine will survive 100 years, and will people look at them with the same awe and love and respect, or will they look at them and go, why did she put a cat riding a bicycle on this quilt? Why did she pick this fabric? Why does this not? This looks like every bad fabric in a novelty store ended up in the same quilt.
You're listening to Fussy Cutters Club podcast, a show that gives you permission to cut into the good fabric so you can make quilts you love. And now your host, who believes it's not a crime to love using novelty fabrics, Ange Wilson.
Welcome, Fussy Cutters, to another great episode of Fussy Cutters podcast. Today I'm talking to the wonderful Helene, all the way from Norway. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know very many Norwegian quilters. And so I was very excited to get to sit down and chat with Helene. She has a wonderful eye for detail and colour and composition, and just a beautiful outlook on life and a really contagious personality. And so it was a real pleasure to sit down and talk to her and ask her all the questions that I had about Norwegian quilting, and find out a little bit more about Norway, because we don't really hear much down under about our European bedfellows. And so it's really interesting to see how similar life is and the little nuances that are specific to where we all live and grow up and how we experience life. So it was a great chat. I was very excited to meet Helene and to chat with her. And I'm really excited to share it all with you, because I think it's really important that we get to hear other voices and learn a little bit more about other parts of the world. And so I'm excited for you guys to hear this. So without further ado, let's get chatting. Hi, Helene. Welcome to Fussy Cutters podcast. I always forget the club in that, but welcome to the club.
Thank you. Thank you, Ange.
Now,
I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you because for our listeners that don't know where in the world you are, do you want to tell us where you are?
Sure. I am in Tønsberg, Norway, and it's on the southeast coast of Norway. Mostly Norway does have a west coast and a coast going all the way around, but I'd say it's a little south of Oslo.
Okay.
About an hour.
All right. So, because geography was such a bad subject for me in high school, I actually had to Google it and look it up. And where you are in the world has some of the most stunning landscape, like just completely different to the landscape that we have here in Australia. And the thing that I love about your work is that you take full advantage of your location. And so when you take photos of your quilts, you get this little snapshot, pardon the pun, of life in Norway at the same time, and the landscape and the different type of architecture that you guys have because of the environment that you live in, the snow. It's so crisp. I don't know whether that's a reality of living in Norway, or just because that's your photographic style, but everything seems really white and crisp and blue skies. And is that the reality of living in Norway, or is that just how I imagine it?
Maybe it's just that you only want to take your camera out when it's not raining.
That's true.
I don't know. Well, first of all, thank you. If you've ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
yep.
Yeah, it does have like this very great description of Norway it's like, yeah, that's where we put the most effort. We wanted to make something really beautiful, so here it is.
Yeah, and it's I don't know whether it's a byproduct of growing up for us in a country so isolated from the rest of the world, and every animal here is trying to kill you, and it's the harsh elements. But Norway just seems to be really, it's romantic. like in I was going to say Brothers Grimm, but that's not it. But you know what I mean? Like I feel like a princess scrubbing floors in a Norwegian building would not be out of place, that there would be bluebirds on the windowsill and, you know, like that whole kind of folk tale and folklore and things like that seems so romantic from this side of the globe. But I don't know whether that's just television skewing my version of events for Norway. But then your fabric choices seem to echo this as well. When you, like your latest quilt, is it Pine Trip that's come out?
Yeah, that's
your
right.
Your cover quilt for it has birds and little flowers and things. Like it just seems like Norway in a very outdoorsy, woody, you know, like do you find the landscape influences your fabric choices, do you think?
Oh, 100%. So both the landscape and also the folklore and the arts and crafts that have been here throughout generations. It really does influence me, and of course there are a lot of things that I like around the fabric world that I don't put into my quilts, because I also kind of want them to have that Norwegian vibe. So it's absolutely intentional, but I love trying to pick out just the right colors and just the right fabrics that evoke that mood that I want to create. And it's fun that you say that it's kind of a fairy tale world, because we're a modern country. We drive cars like everyone else, and you know this obviously. but again, if you ever fly across Europe on a bright day, you will see that a lot of Europe has been built all over the place, and there's agriculture, and there are roads and cities and tiny places all over. And then you cross the North Sea, and you enter over Norway, and it's just forests and mountains, and you'll see tiny settlements scattered around the coast, but it's mostly just nature. and I think that's really influencing the way we live our lives. We have this word called friluftsliv, which basically means free air life. And that's just a way of living. It's what we do. We go outside, stay outside, we go hiking, and that's where, it's said if Norwegians we meet in a city, we won't say hello. But if we meet on some kind of
hiking trail,
tiny path in the we'll stop and chat and ask, where are you going? And so it's a deeply rooted in who we are.
But then I think that's
so nature is important.
Yeah, and it's really beautiful, and it shows in both your photography, because you are passionate about photography as well, and then it shows in your quilt designs and your fabric choices and the colours that you pair together. I know that as an Australian, whenever we travel internationally, people who have also travelled tend to go, oh, we can pick the Aussies because they're always wearing really bright colours. And the quilts that you see coming out of Australia tend to be really brightly coloured. We tend to really love colour down here, but then if you look at our flora and fauna, we have really bright coloured flora and fauna, and so that those colours are in everything around us, and so it's understandable that they influence our work as well. And then it's really interesting to see, like I said, marrying that preconceived assumption of what I think life is like with you guys, and then to actually see you sharing both the nature side of things and the craft side of things. And then you do share photos from around cities, and you take the industrial side of things like murals and older buildings and things like that and share that in your work as well. So you're getting, it's like a little time capsule of life in Norway, but it's not, I often find it funny when people are like, oh, we're all so different. And you go, no, we're all essentially the same. We all have the similar experiences but our location influences how we see things and experience things, but then we're all doing the same thing with fabric. We're just who we are influences those things. And so we have more similarities. Do you find, is like quilting a big thing in Norway? Because it's not where I am, but I wondered whether the climate makes it more.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's probably kind of like in Australia. It's more of a niche thing. I'd say the big crafty thing here is knitting with wool, obviously, because it's cold so much of the year. So knitting has been hugely popular for a long, long time. And there are lots of young people knitting these days, and also sewing and redesign has gotten a popularity lately. But quilting is still kind of an underground grandma thing, which I'm hoping to raise,
lower the age limit, raise the popularity. So if knitting is a big thing and quilting is an underground thing for you guys, how did you become a quilter?
Great question. Love that. As a kid, I was into anything craftsy. I started knitting at like 5, 6, I don't know, and sewing, and I would do anything. If there was an 80s craft, I did it, which included like dabbling in patchwork when I was maybe like 13, 14, because I had to try it. And back then it was quite popular here as well. But it was not until I went to Wisconsin in the United States as an exchange student that the quilting really escalated. Wow. And I stayed at a dairy farm. So my host family were dairy farmers. And my host mom, Janine, she was an avid quilter. Wow. So she taught me everything there was to know about quilting. And my first quilt was it was called Farmer's Daughter, which felt very appropriate, of course. I think we found the pattern in a magazine or something. And I'd say it's twin size, I think. So I pieced it with lots of scraps from her stash. And she took me to a fabric store and we got some background fabric. And it's still one of my favorites.
And you still have it?
And I hand quilted it.
Okay, yep.
I still have it. Yeah, maybe it's right here where I'm sitting. No.
Wow. So you okay? Yeah. And how long were you in Wisconsin for? Oh,
for a year, one school year.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I came back to Norway after that year in Wisconsin, and I had this new love of quilting, and no one else was quilting my age. Nobody. I mean, absolutely nobody. And I was like, where are all the quilters? The 16-year-old quilters, where are they? And guess what? I was the only one. And I kept quilting for a few years. And I even entered my farmer's daughter quilt in like this culture show for young people. And obviously I was the only quilter in the show as well. And I did make some quilts for my sister, for her confirmation, and for friends who got married and little babies. And, people start popping out babies after a few years. But then I don't know, you
life
move into your own house. Life happens. You have a family and you have little kids. And where would you put all that sewing related stuff? And so it the quilting kind of was put on hold for a few years. And I did have a couple of years where I sewed a lot of kids' clothes using repurposed fabrics and really colorful stuff. And I also made baby carriers.
Oh, okay, yep. So the wrap ones, like where they put the baby in the thing, is that the swaddling carrier? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a rectangular piece of fabric, a sturdy fabric in a few layers, and then it would have 4 straps out from the corners. Wow. And I did use a lot of what I took with me from the quilting with patchwork, and I had some applique, and this was back when Amy Butler was big, so I used a lot of her fabrics. Yeah, but after that baby wearing period, we moved to a new house, and I just didn't have any time for sewing. So I put it away for quite some time.
And then what brought you back?
What brought me back was that I do have a quite creative job. I'm a graphic designer. But I do spend a lot of time in front of the computer. Yep. So it will be like hours in front of the computer. And I started really missing that tactile aspect of design work. And when my oldest son moved out a couple of years ago, we all of a sudden did have a new room that he wasn't using all the time. So we had kind of a move around of bedrooms in our house. And all of a sudden we had this spare room. And I said to my husband, I think I need a new sewing room to get the creative juices flowing again. And, I don't like having sewing mess spread out over time.
Yep.
So I just can't stand having it on the dining table. So I just needed to have it there. And the first thing I did was to just pick out all my old stuff and make a Christmas quilt. I was like, it's almost Christmas. I can make a quilt before Christmas, which you obviously can't. Because it takes a lot of time. And I remember just sitting there piecing little squares and making stars and thinking, this is it. Why on earth have I not been doing this for so long? I really missed it. And it just gives me peace of mind. Yeah. Just putting these fabrics together, cutting it, sitting down and chain piecing and letting your thoughts fly away or listening to a good podcast. Yeah. So that's how I got into it again. And
so the next question that follows from that is, what made you leap from I'll just sew for pleasure to I've got these patterns that I want to put out into the world? What was the catalyst?
I think what happened was that I sat down and, earlier, before, when I've been making quilts, I've usually just started cutting and I've had a plan in my head and made like the first couple of blocks and then seeing, this turned out this big. Then I just have to cut the next pieces this size and then keep going and building it out until I'm done. And I ran out of fabric and I was like, okay, so that's the size this quilt has. Great. So no math, no plan, no whatsoever. And this time I thought, well, why don't I just whip this up in Illustrator and I'll kind of see how many squares I need to cut. Because what happened since the last time I was quilting is that now all of a sudden I have this graphic design education and lots of years of experience. And it just clicked in my brain and I was like, well, if I can make patterns for myself, I can make them for others. Because I've never really been following patterns. Because why would you follow a pattern when you have all this stuff in your brain that needs to come out? And then I just realized that a lot of people want to follow patterns, which was kind of an epiphany for me. Since that's just hasn't been my thing, and I just felt that I can do this. Why not? And that's a Scandinavian thing. You've probably heard of Pippi Longstocking.
Yes, my mum is a big Pippi Longstockings fan. So yeah. And her motto is, "I've never done it before, so of course I can do it." Yep. Mine's how hard can it be? How hard can it be?
Yeah, right.
Other people can do it. But yeah.
Yeah. So I started writing my first pattern, and which is called Waffles and Jam, inspired by waffles,
jam?
Obviously. And jam, because we have jam on waffles and sour cream.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah. And I just put all this information into the pattern because what confused me about patterns was that, but they do leave a lot of information out here.
Yeah.
Right?
There's an underlying assumption of knowledge.
Just assume. Yeah. Like, quilt and bind as desired. Yep. And I was like, well, what if you don't know how to do that? So my first version of Waffles and Jam had like all this information in it, like how to bind, how to quilt, how to do everything, because someone has to tell you, and why wouldn't that be me? But then I realized that, okay, if I'm going to do this for every pattern, it's going to take me a lot of time. So I decided I'd rather put that on a blog, which felt very 2002. But still, I just decided that was a better option.
But someone out there needs that information. Like that's how things are done, passed along. So
absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's a good thing to have that information out there, but I just couldn't put it in all my patterns. But so what I do now is I have QR codes in the patterns that lead to those tutorials. So it doesn't take up as much space in the pattern.
Spoken like a true graphic designer. Yep. It's more compact.
More compact for sure. And I also decided to take Elizabeth Chappell's quilt pattern writing course. And she does have a lot of great information on how to use Adobe. And at first I was kind of like, I use Adobe every day. Will I really learn anything? But I did, absolutely. And for me, it was mostly about like finding out how to niche down, and also the business side of things, and connecting to other pattern writers, getting to know the industry. And quilt math, of course, obviously. I'm a metric girl.
Me too.
And although, fellow metrician. So although I was comfortable using inches and all that, it's a learning curve to do the math with a pattern writing purpose.
So my husband has a degree in mathematics, right, which sounds really special. And I remember when I first started, I asked him, I needed to work out some geometry for a quilt pattern and work out measurements and things like that. And I was like, maths was not my strong suit at school. And so I thought, I know, I'll ask the guy who's got a degree in mathematics. How do you do this? And I swear, funniest thing ever, watching him try to work out rotary cutting instructions and the math, because he had to go from metric to imperial, and then he had to kind of try and learn and understand. So now I just don't ask him any math questions at all. And we have a lot of cheat sheets that I've developed over the years where if that's the finished size I want of a certain thing, then this is the cut, trim, dink size. So I completely understand. And then when we did our first renovation, I remember talking to we're doing the bathroom, and the builder was like, how big do you want this thing? And I was like, 4 inches by 2. And he was like, what? About this big. I'm going to need you to do that in metric. And I was like, okay. Then I'd have to go away. What is 4 inches in metric? So, yeah, it's a funny way that we end up. And I think it's really interesting because you're very creative and you have the ideas and you don't follow the pattern, but you write the pattern. And then you write the pattern for the people who are the opposite of you, who like a pattern and want to follow something and just want to make something that they know is going to work out without that trial and error. And so you're made for each other. And that's the thing that I love about our industry.
Oh, that's the beauty of it.
We find the people like together, everyone balances each other out. And so again, it's that thing of we're more similar than dissimilar and that we complement each other as well. But it's interesting that like, I know like a lot of people that I've spoken to in the past, they're like, oh, I'm an accountant or I'm a lawyer or I'm a teacher and so I need this creative outlet. But you went from a literal creative job, that's me. You went from a creative job to like a creative outlet for your downtime. So it's a really interesting thing that I think that creativity, sometimes you just can't get enough of it or you need it in different ways and then you're now blogging, you're sharing your photos with the world. You have one of the most beautiful Instagram feeds. Do you find that, it makes me want to move to Norway? I don't speak the language, don't understand the currency, but I would be there in a heartbeat. And I'm not an outdoorsy person, so I'm like, totally not. So do you find that you attract people from Europe, or do you find that your patterns are more because for me, my audience is primarily American or North American. Do you find that it's the same for you, or is there like this whole European quilter society that we don't see that often, but these are out there lurking in the bright shadows?
I don't know, because I don't see them either.
Okay.
Well, I know there is quite a thriving European quilting community, but how I discovered quilting again was also through Instagram and that thriving community of modern quilters that are primarily in North America.
Yeah, and it's
and I'd say my audience is primarily over there, and that's who I mainly focus on in my communications, because as a Norwegian in Norway, it's not a niche to say, hey, look at my Norwegian quilt patterns. It's not really that unique, right? Because everyone in Norway is Norwegian. There's nothing big about that.
It's funny.
So I'm mainly trying to reach an audience abroad, and that's also why I want to tell a little story about Norway, and I try to tell a story in each and every one of my patterns. I'll usually include a little story at the start on the background and my inspiration. And maybe a photo from the photo albums of the past. Like I had one my free pattern that's called Stormy Stitches. It's inspired by knitting, and it has this photo of me picking rocks on the shore, wearing a knitted cardigan at the year back in 1982 when I was just 2 years old. And trying to tell this story about the inspiration and just show a tiny little piece of Norway.
But see, that's beautiful.
With every pattern.
To me, I'm like, that's the thing that would suck me in. Like you would just, but it's the thing that sucked me into the craft in the first place, was that I loved this idea that someone would sit down and intentionally make something, then gift it to somebody else, and 100 years later that thing still exists and people are still using it for its purpose. And and I started quilting when our son was a baby, and I even now when he snuggles into one of the quilts, I think, well, if anything ever happens to me, he'll have little handmade hugs from mum all around the house. And I think it's the stories that make life interesting, and it's the thing that connects us all and we can empathize and identify with. And I love that you put that up front. And see, you, like me, work on the assumption that people read patterns, but you've just self-identified that you don't read any patterns. So I think oftentimes I'm like, I put all this stuff in at the start of a pattern and I'm like, who reads it? Like, who's gonna, but I think there's that history there, that connectivity to your roots and who you are and what makes you unique. But at the same time, it's those things that connect us all as well. And so that's really beautiful. I'm hoping in Waffles and Jam, there is just a picture of a big plate of waffles with jam. And
yes, there is.
So if it's a underground kind of craft in Norway and you don't have do you get excited when you meet a fellow Norwegian who quilts? Like, is there like a little buzz that goes through the air?
Absolutely, I do get very excited, and we do absolutely have a quilting community, although not as big as they don't take up as much space as the knitters do, right? But I was invited to Trondheim a couple of weeks ago to do a lecture there, and I was just amazed to see that there were almost 100 people at the Quilt Guild, and there was just so much buzz and creativity, and they had so many quilts on display, and it was so inspiring to meet them. And it turns out up in Trondheim they love waffles, so they did really embrace the pattern that I had brought, which was a lot of fun.
Great.
And so meeting other creatives really does inspire me a lot. And I have been very lucky to meet up with a couple of other quilters my age, which happen to be Americans living in the Oslo area. So you might know Daisy Askehaug.
Oh, no.
She's a modern quilter, has been lecturing at QuiltCon and published a few books. She lives in Norway, and Lisa Fuller of Million Bun Designs. So we're having regular get-togethers, and it's just super inspiring to find your people in a world where your thing is not so prominent.
But do you still have something to do with your Wisconsin sponsor, like exchange student mum, Janine? Do you still? Or she passed?
Oh, what's really sad is that she passed just last year at a quite young age. So that's really sad. And I just wish I had gotten the chance to talk to her about quilting again before she passed, because we didn't have a lot of contact the past few years. You know, just the regular Facebook hello and like and happy birthday.
But she would have seen that you were still making quilts, which is really special. Like, it's like she now lives on the fact that she helped you unlock what you do, and now you're passing that on to other people. And that's how I kind of go. There's a few key women in my life who've taught me things about quilting, and I think a little bit of them lives on in stuff that like little tips and tricks that I do now to be more accurate or to save cutting. I now pass those on because those women gave them to me, and then I give them to somebody else, and then they give them to somebody else. And so we have this craft that's built on all these women and men that have gone before us that have done it. And I think that's really special. But I completely understand the missed opportunity that you feel like you've had there. So
that's absolutely a beautiful aspect of the craft. And I want to pick up something that you said before about making something that stays in the world when you're gone. I think that's a really beautiful aspect to it. And in these times when sustainability is big and we all have a responsibility to take care of the planet and use less, I can sometimes feel bad about having a hobby that in some aspects, there's a lot of fabric out there, right?
Yeah, don't look behind me, but yes.
We want it all, right?
Yes.
I'm not shaming anyone, absolutely not. But what I feel is that when you make something with your own hands, you want to take good care of it. And you want the world to see the thing that you've made. And it's not like it's fast fashion, right? You don't make it and then you throw it away next year because it's not in fashion anymore. You make it and you cherish it, and the next generation can use it for years and years. And I just think that's something that's worth considering.
A couple of years ago when I was in Houston, the biggest thing I've ever bought money-wise in America, I splurged and bought a quilt that was made in 1802. And I absolutely loved it. I walked past it on the first day and I saw it and I was like, oh, I love you, but I can't. And I kept walking. And then I'd find myself standing back in front of it and then I'd go again and I'd come back and it just captivated me. And on the last day, it was still there. And I was like, oh, I'm so spending the money on this and bringing it home. And it tickles me on some level that a lady made it in 1802 in America, and now it lives in 2025 on the other side of the planet in a place she's likely never even heard of, didn't exist when she made it. And here it is giving our family enjoyment. And so I often chuckle and think about which quilts of mine will survive 100 years, and will people look at them with the same awe and love and respect, or will they look at them and go, why did she put a cat riding a bicycle on this quilt? Why did she pick this fabric? Why does this not? This looks like every bad fabric in a novelty store ended up in the same quilt. And I kind of go, to me, I love the idea that someone could just stumble along my quilt and then have to tell their own story about how they think I made it. And so that amuses me. And I think that's the romantic or sentimentalist in me is really drawn to in our craft. And a lot of times when you teach or you go to quilt shows or you see people, and especially on Instagram, you see somebody go, oh, I'm not happy with this, my points don't line up, or I wish I hadn't have chosen that fabric, or I wish I had have done this differently. And they point out all the flaws on their project. I want them to take the time and look at it and go, but think about the fact that you made this. You spent the time, you learnt on this process, you know what you'll do differently, but somewhere on the planet, someone would cherish that quilt and love it and be so happy to call it their own. Think about the joy that brings to other people and just double down on that side of things, not the, oh, I could have done better or my points don't match. And I think, there's some room in there to go, if improvement is a thing that you want to achieve, then there's other things you would do differently, and every quilt's a learning step. But in the same time, that quilt then becomes somebody's blanket fort, or it becomes, in our house, we have a specific quilt that if the kid's home sick from school, that's the quilt it's his sick day quilt, so, or we have quilts that we've made for weddings or birthdays or babies, and so there's these tactile things that become attached to big milestones and people. And I love that everyone around the globe, somewhere there's someone doing it. So, you'll see there's quilters in India and there's quilters in Norway, and 3 of them that 100. You said 100. No,
100. Yeah.
Or there's quilters, like we live in the tropics now, like full on. It's 30 degrees Celsius today, which I think is around 82 Fahrenheit. And so like it's not snuggle under a doona or a quilt kind of weather, but there's an active quilt community here. Like people still make those blankets and they've adapted the way that they make them so that they're better for heat circulation and stuff like that. And I think there's so many of us around the planet just working on this same thing, doing the same steps, because you can't, as far as I'm aware, there's only two ways to join fabric, and that's either with a machine or by hand. There's no, like, you can't staple the fabric together in a quilt. You can't, can't lick and stick, or you can't glue it. So we're all doing the exact same thing. But yeah, it's just, and it's beautiful that your story or experience is something that you started on your own in Norway, went to America and happened to end up in a family where it was a thing, and then brought it back to Norway, and now you're connecting with other people in your area and globally, and it's a thing of beauty. But yes, so
and it's what I love about it is that it's truly international, and that you can find inspiration everywhere. Like I do draw a lot of inspiration from like I said, crafts that are specific to Norway, but crafts travel, patterns travel. Like we use the 8-pointed star in a lot of decor on knitted sweaters and mittens and woodwork and whatever. But you can see that again in all parts of the world, right? It's not specific to us. And these symbols and patterns and geometric patterns and shapes, they travel. And it's just also so beautiful to see how something that to me could feel very Norwegian will also resonate with someone in India or in the US or wherever, because it's just something very human to want to decorate the world around us and make it beautiful.
And it's the nerd that I married, the mathematician, he would say maths is the universal language, and therefore geometry, which essentially is what quilting is, which amuses him no end because I am not a mathematician, that geometry is universal, that we all use the same shapes in the similar ways. And it is really interesting to see when people try and divide us on cultural differences, and you go, well, those are three differences and we've got this plethora of a billion things that we all share in common, but you want to focus on those three things where we're different. And I think we are different in how we apply the 8-point star, for example, and the way that is translated in Norwegian folklore, and then the way an 8-pointed star is used in Japanese design and things like that. Yeah, those nuances are different for where those locations are, but fundamentally they're still the same thing. You're still telling a story, right. You're still improving your surroundings, you're still making something and creating something and putting it out there. And it is one of the things that, as much as I hate social media, it's the thing that I love most about social media, is that we can take that inspiration from each other and reinterpret it and put a spin on it, or knuckle down to that, because I really love traditional blocks. I love the stories behind the traditional blocks. I love making traditional quilt blocks, and that's my jam. But I like making traditional quilt blocks with contemporary fabric and putting the cat on the bicycle or, something in there. And so that's just my little bit of flavour. But essentially it's the same thing that lady in 1802 was doing. I just use modern tools, modern fabrics, contemporary. And so it's an interesting way that we're all really connected, and I'm really excited. So we connected through Instagram, right? You were very gracious and kind and said that you liked listening to the podcast, which I still find amazing. And I was like, well, come on the podcast, because I was so excited that someone in Norway, one of the 103, know what I was doing. So it's a really exciting when you connect that thing and then to be able to sit and lose an hour or so and go through all your photos and see, like, tell me the photo, is it the potting shed? Your greenhouse. Your greenhouse looks like something out of a home decor magazine. And I think it's, but it's so clean. Do you actually do any greenhouse type stuff in there? Or did you clean it all and it's behind the camera?
No. I think I took that photo last weekend, and that was the day of the spring cleaning of my greenhouse. So on Friday, I took everything out. On Saturday, I cleaned it from top to bottom and put everything back in and styled it.
But it's beautiful.
But now it's there's a lot of soil in there now. But thank you.
But it's the so your latest quilt pine trip. Can you tell us a little bit about where you took the inspiration from that from?
Sure. In Norway, there's this huge culture of going to the cabin. It's very common to have a cabin in the woods or in the mountains or even by the sea, especially for those cabins that are in the mountains and the forest. They'll all be made of pine traditionally. So you'll have pine floors, pine ceilings, pine walls, pine furniture, pine decor, pine everything, right? So that gives this kind of a golden glow to everything. And very often they'll have like a wall hanging made of embroidery in a very kind of a special technique called klostersøm, which was very popular in the 60s and 70s. And for a couple of decades, this look has been really out of fashion. So people would, if you came to a house that had this look, you would be like, oh, we need to paint this shit, right? It needs to be white. But luckily, some of it survives. And now pine is back in fashion, at least in some segments of the population. And for some, it has never been out of fashion either. And I kind of just wanted to capture this coziness of the pine cabins and also of that wall hanging style, because it usually has kind of these muted colors and a gradient across the embroidery, with still being very geometric and lots of stars and lots of So that's kind of what I wanted to capture, like super, super cozy and warm and going to the cabin kind of feeling.
Well, it would be at home in our house because we've bought the house that we now live in. I'm not a fan of pine and I'm not a fan of the golden thing, but our house has a massive, we call it the teepee, but it's a giant pyramid roofed room, and it is literally pine.
Wow.
Pine, all the way up the ceiling, this big tree in the middle of it. It's just pine everywhere. And that was I was chuckling because when we walked in, the first thing I said to my husband is, we're painting it white. And then our kid brought home a friend from school, and his parents are from Sri Lanka, I think. They came to pick him up and they walked in, and his father was like, wow, this is beautiful and stunning, and like was really effervescent about our pine. And they were doing a reno at the time on their place, and it's a very modern house. Like it's like it looks like it should be in a home magazine. And then when we went to pick up our kid the next time after they finished the reno, his father was like, come in and have a look. And in their media room, he'd done pine paneling on all the walls. And he's like, I took inspiration from your house.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay. That's a lot of pine. All right. It's not something that I thought we would ever be living with, and it makes me chuckle because now I'll go down there and I'll think, oh, it's like being in a Norwegian cabin. We're very international.
It is. Very, very
cosmopolitan.
Very contemporary. Very cosmopolitan.
But it is interesting that those things are shared again across because I know here they have a big culture of going to what we call huts. So they're not flashy enough to be cabins. They're just generally 4 poles and a bit of corrugated iron on the top, and then some mosquito netting, and people sort of sleep in them. And they're like beach huts. And so they go fishing and hunting and stuff like that. And I think, would I ever do a quilt inspired by my experiences in a beach hut? Probably not.
Oh, you should.
I was having the worst time of my life. I was covered in mosquito bites. I don't like fishing. I don't like hunting. No, but I'm sure someone out there can make it.
You know, there's inspiration everywhere.
Yeah, and I don't like gardening, but your greenhouse would make me go, oh, I could totally be a gardener. Look at all that terracotta against the black. And it is really, like, I look at your greenhouse photo and I think, oh, the herringbone bricks, that's a pattern in quilting that I've always loved when we do quilting, quilting on quilts. The herringbone design often looks really nice on quilts. And then I think, oh, the terracotta against that black and that dark brown, that's a really interesting fabric combination. So, you know, like, it's interesting where those inspirations come from. And I'm jealous because you've got wicker baskets and my husband has a personal prejudice against wicker. So we're not allowed to have any wicker basket. I know. Oh. I don't get it. It's some trauma from childhood. So we have no baskets in the house. And occasionally if I really want to get under his skin, I'll bring a basket into the house and just leave it for him to find. But yeah, I mean, it's all those things.
Just to be mean?
Well, he's obviously done something to deserve it. No. But I really love baskets. I'm like, they're so handy and you can do so much with them. And he just flat refuses.
Oh, they are.
I'm like, I don't understand it. Whatever his mother did to him about it.
How can you not like baskets?
It's weird, right?
That's weird.
And like Easter's coming up. How are we supposed to put our Easter eggs? Where do we put them? Like if we don't have a basket.
I don't know. You'll have to make some quilted bag
plastic.
Or something.
He likes those plastic.
With cute fussy cut little bunnies.
Yeah, I actually have some bunnies in the stash.
Oh, what a surprise.
As I said that, I was like, yeah. Christy from Quiet Play and I often play this game where she'll be like, do you have, and she'll name something really random and I'll be like, yes, I do. She's like, of course you do.
Okay, so you're probably the person I should talk to now that I'm having this idea for one of my quilts that I want to try out. The quilt that's called Fjord Star is based on my logo, which is an 8-pointed star with a stylized fjord landscape in the middle. And I kind of want to make a quilt that's called A Year in the Fjords. And I'll have like one star and one fjord, obviously, for every month of the year, or maybe one for each season. And I want to fussy cut little things happening throughout the year in the blocks. But I'm just struggling to find a great selection.
You let me know what you would like.
Skiers, hikers. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have a lot of skiers?
Again, it's outdoorsy, so probably not. I know Dear Stella had a really great scale print for 1-inch finish size blocks, and it was a bunch of skiers going down. Actually, I think Ruby Star did a skiing. Did they do skiing?
They did? Oh, I love Ruby Star. I just must have missed that one.
I think it might have been Cotton and Steel at the time. But I tell you what, put a list together of what you would like. I think I've got moose. I think I've got deer. I've got birds.
Yeah.
But if you put a list together, I will cut some swatches and send them to you so you can fussy cut for your year. Because I have too much fabric, and then that way some of my fabric will live on in a Norwegian quilt. But yeah, the only thing I can't guarantee is that it'll be white background, but I will definitely, because like you could put little people in cabins or people like going down the slope. Yeah.
That would be perfect. Oh, I need to make a little cabin. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. With lots of pine.
Yeah.
Oh, you're just too sweet. And that's one thing I've been so inspired by when listening to your podcasts. I remember when I painted my new sewing room, I would sit on the floor and paint the floors and listen to your podcast. And you had some conversation with a very funny person. And you were talking about cutting into the good stuff and how there's always a new collection of stuff, nice fabrics coming up. So just don't hesitate to use the good fabrics. And that's been so inspiring and very cathartic. Cathartic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But it was a hard lesson to learn because I think I, like everybody else, like we'd always have like a good china set, or there was stuff that we would only use when people visited, or, you know, or fabric that I loved but I just would never cut into, and stuff like that. And we had somebody pass away, and their thing was as they were dying, it was like, and I think they got it off a movie or something like that, but their lesson was like, use it all now, because it's no use holding on to the good stuff for what if. Anything can happen, so use it now. And that was a really interesting and difficult lessons to learn. But we eat fish and chips, like our fish and chip meal, on the good china now. Or I use the good china and pray that no one will drop it, because I'm like, well, I would rather have memories of us at the table mucking around and with china patterns that I really love, instead of just the generic white stuff that I was using, because I was so afraid that the good stuff would get broken. And there's that Japanese.
And who enjoys that good stuff when it's in on a shelf or
and you know that
tucked away?
I do. We do have a china cabinet display where I have all my blue and white china with little pops of yellow that the husband often laughs about, because he's like, you're the only person I know that styles china and then puts accent colours in to make your china pop. And I'm like, it makes me happy every time I walk into that room and I see all that blue and white china and those little lemons, because they're like little collections of lemons everywhere. That yellow makes me really happy. So, and the fabric's the same. Like there's fabric that I bought when I was with friends at a fabric store. And so when I cut into it, I think about the fact that we were in that fabric store together and we were having a laugh. Or when we travel, I always try and find a fabric somewhere when we're traveling. And so if you use that, you've got that memory in there as well. And then like this, I have more fabric than I will ever need or use in my lifetime. So if someone else is trying to make a quilt that they want specific things from, like, sure, I will cut swatches and send it to you. And then a little bit of me gets to be in a quilt that's going to be finished, hopefully, because I don't finish any of mine. But yeah, it's that thing of, it's the thing that when I was starting, people were so generous. Like, I would go to the Quilt Guild meeting and be like, oh, I'm struggling to do this. And 6 women would go, oh, I know how to fix that for you. Or, you know, Rayleigh, who does all my quilting, has been so generous with her knowledge and time. And she'll be like, oh, I'll unpick that for you. I know that you know, you're struggling at the moment and you've got all these things to finish, and I'll sew that for you. Or you would go, one of the things that I really love on Instagram is when they do quilty wishes and people put out, like, I'm looking for this fabric, or I want this fabric. And you're like, I have some of that and you can have it. And you just know when they get the envelope, they're so excited to have this fabric. And then you hope that they put it in a quilt where they look at it and go, oh, someone on the other side of the planet sent me that. And that was really lovely. But yeah, you got to use the good stuff across all of life. Like, it's too short. And even now I go to work a couple of days a week and I wear bright colours at work all the time. And a few people at work have been like, you're always really brightly coloured, brightly dressed. And I'm like, I used to dress really conservatively when I had a government job. It was always navy or grey or black, or, you know, like whatever I thought business was supposed to be. And life's too short. Mm-hmm. You need the colour. You need the stupid earrings that are giant lobsters. You need, like, all of those things, because that's what life is. It's all those little moments of just absurdity and colour, and if it makes you happy to do those things, then it's not hurting anybody. Like, I mean,
Absolutely.
I say it's not hurting anyone, but the guy who has to look at me across the desk at work probably thinks, geez, lady, would you put some a bit of muted colours?
What are these lobsters doing here? But hopefully you're adding more joy and maybe a little bit of confusion to his life than anything else.
Beaded lobster. So I've got a couple of different lobster earrings, but I wore beaded lobsters the other day to work. And my boss, I walked in to talk to her about something. And as I was walking out of her office, she just like did a double take and she went, "Are those bejeweled lobsters?" And I'm like, yes, they are. Thank you for noticing. Dork. Okay.
Yeah. Why would you not wear lobster earrings when you can?
Exactly. Life is too short. It's not like I'm wearing them in the studio, although I probably should. But yeah, I kind of go. And that's the thing, when we were lucky enough or fortunate enough to have a child after trying for so long, that was the thing that I said to my husband. I just want him to grow up knowing that it's okay to do those things that everyone else will say is odd and weird, but makes you happy. Because you never know, there could be 103 other people in the place that also like that odd thing that you do. And that's the thing that you connect over, and you make the best friends that you'll ever have. And the people that, I always joke, Ray Lee used to take me to the emergency room at 2:00 in the morning when I was sick. And I think, who else would do that but a quilter? Like, it's not, they're so generous. They think about other people all the time. It's this craft that is built around serving others, making stuff for other people. And they're the friends that you meet over the shared love of odd fabric or lobster earrings, or like, you know, all of those weird things that make you who you are. So, but yes, anyway, that's a long way of going.
Yeah, it's all about connecting with other people, and it's beautiful, and it's a part of the great joys of life.
And it's in a sport, I often call our craft a sport, where we are predominantly introverts. Like, you know, occasionally it's a joint sport, but it's essentially you're a lone sewer in the room by yourself, cutting fabric, making things. It always amazes me how much we also thrive on just finding one another. And introverts, even I sat next to So Sweetness at a quilt market one year, and she is one of the loveliest people, but she will even tell you herself she's a massive introvert, just has issues with crowds and things like that. And I remember sitting there and trying not to crowd her space sort of thing, and just being in awe that she was there, and thinking, even someone who is petrified of being in public or that's not there, she gets something out of just hearing people talking about it or doing it, or coming up to her and saying, I made your pattern, or I did this. And so I think we do all need each other. And in this world where we're so often told to hate each other or to push each other away, and I think that's so not what we need. What we need is more of us being nice to each other. And then the kid will say to me, Mum, shut up already. We get it. We need people. Yeah, buddy.
But it's so true, Ange. Yeah.
But yes.
Absolutely.
So on that navel gazing, we have been talking for a while because we had a quick chat beforehand, and I will let you go, and I will thank you for turning up on this early Norwegian morning, and for sharing and for reaching out. So there's a lesson to anybody. If you want to be on a podcast, just reach out. And I look forward to seeing what else you're doing, and email me that list of stuff and I'll send it to you.
Oh, awesome, Ange. Thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun, and I love your podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Fussy Cutters podcast. Enjoyed listening? Why not subscribe so you'll never miss an episode? Did you know the quickest way to the heart of any podcaster is to leave a review or recommend the podcast to a friend? It's true, it is. Until next week, get out there and fondle that fabric.